Hey everyone, it's Judy Craddock, the body confidence coach, author of the Little Book of Body Confidence and creator of the Body Confidence Journey, the coaching program for women who want to stop chasing the perfect body and embrace the one that they are in. And today is Body Confident Friday. This episode is all about dealing with heightened body anxiety as we come out of lockdown. Now, I'm based here in the UK and we are just coming out of our third period of lockdown, albeit very slowly and very carefully. And I don't know anyone who hasn't been affected by the pandemic and the effects of lockdown. You know, being isolated for long periods of time and not being able to see your family and friends is really difficult for everyone involved. And the pandemic has no doubt been uncertain, it's been scary at times, and it's been very anxiety provoking, especially if you are someone who has had COVID. Maybe some of you are still recovering from long COVID, or maybe you've lost some loved ones during the pandemic. And if that's you, please accept my love and my heartfelt condolences for your loss. But despite the fact that we are living through, because we're still living through this pandemic, right? We are living through this global pandemic. There's still a voice which is loud and clear and is getting louder and louder as the days go on. And that's the voice of diet culture. And that voice is telling us that we need to dump the chunk and that we need to get our pre-lockdown bodies back. And this makes me so cross. And if you're someone who is feeling a bit anxious about reconnecting with the world, maybe you are feeling a bit anxious about the fact that you have perhaps put on some weight during the pandemic and you're worried about what other people are going to think about your post-lockdown body once you go back out socializing or back out into the office or work, then these kind of messages really aren't going to help you. And also, of course, if you suffered with poor body image or you felt anxious about your body before going into the pandemic, it's likely the pandemic itself has not helped. And those enforced periods of isolation, because it could have gone one of two ways, really. So either you've perhaps felt a lot more secure and safe being in lockdown because you weren't able to go out and interact with other people, and so you weren't worrying about what other people thought about your body. Or maybe having those enforced periods of isolation gave you more time to think about your body, and you found that your inner critic, that sort of negative inner voice, was really ramping up on you during lockdown. So it could have worked either way, but it doesn't really matter which of those two scenarios was true for you. Then coming out of lockdown is likely to be anxiety provoking in either case. So what can you do if you are struggling now with body anxiety as we come out of lockdown? Well, this is something that I've noticed my clients struggling with, and what they've been saying to me is even though the work that we've been doing during lockdown has helped them to feel more neutral in their bodies, they are worried that once they go back out into the world again and start reconnecting with people, that they're going to lose some of that neutrality and take a few steps back and start feeling quite negative about their bodies. So I know that this is a very real issue for everyone out there. And so if that's you right now, please know that you're not alone and what you're feeling is completely natural and normal. So let's talk about some different ways that you can actually address that. So let's talk about 3 strategies or tips that will help you to deal with body anxiety as we come out of lockdown. So my first tip for you is to know that losing weight or getting back into shape does not have to be your number one priority coming out of lockdown. Now, unfortunately, the diet industry is ramping up in the same way that it would do after Christmas as we go into the new year, and also as we go into pre-holiday season. And in fact, we're not that far away from pre-holiday season here in the Northern Hemisphere either. And unfortunately, diet culture and the diet industry has got a whole new opportunity as a result of the pandemic, I hate to say. And just because diet culture is telling us that our number one priority needs to be that we ought to try to lose weight, or we need to kind of get our body back into shape, doesn't mean that we have to listen to it. Because quite frankly, if we're coming out, or we're trying to recover from this pandemic, we've got a lot of other shit to be dealing with right now. Why should losing weight be our number one priority? So instead of listening and tuning into these messages of diet culture, decide what is going to be your main priority. So for example, it could be, and this is really important, it could be about reconnecting with your friends and family that you haven't seen for so long. It could be that you need to prioritize recovering from long COVID if you're still suffering from that. It could be that you need to prioritize your mental health because lockdown has been hard on people. So prioritizing mental health is really important, and maybe you need to get some support and help with that. Or it could be that your priority is just to get back into those activities and hobbies that you enjoy that you just haven't been able to do over the course of the various lockdowns that we have been through. So decide what is your number one priority, because losing weight doesn't have to be your main priority. So my second tip is to be self-compassionate as you are reconnecting with the world. Because if you are feeling anxious about being around other people, maybe you're feeling anxious about being close to other people, or you're anxious about what other people are going to think about your body post-lockdown, that is a completely natural and normal feeling to have. But you don't need to beat yourself up about that, because that's counterproductive. So if you're feeling this way, just acknowledge that that is the way you feel and tell yourself it's okay to feel that way. And the really important part of self-compassion is acknowledging that you're not alone in the way that you feel, that there are other people out there feeling exactly the same way, because there are. There are people who aren't watching this out there who feel this way, so you definitely are not alone. So just acknowledge that to yourself. And to sort of help you tune into that kind voice, that compassionate voice, think about if you were to tell your best friend how you're feeling, if you were to say to him or her, look, I'm feeling really anxious about my body as we come out of lockdown, what would he or she say to you? It's really unlikely that they'd say, well, you just need to get over that. They'd have some words of reassurance, or they would be empathetic towards you. So try to tune into the voice of your best friend and what he or she might say to you. And my third tip is to, as we come out of lockdown, be really mindful of the media that you are consuming. Now, this is a tip I give a lot because I think it's really important that we do carefully curate the media that we consume, because it can have a big impact on the way that we feel about ourselves, but particularly at this time. So what I'm thinking about here is, you know, those social media accounts who right now are really promoting weight loss or getting super fit, or those accounts that are implying that if you haven't got super fit during lockdown and lost weight, or you haven't written that book, or you haven't started a business, that somehow you are failing and that you have wasted your time. So be really mindful of the media that you are consuming during this transition, because, you know, everyone responds differently to uncertainty and takes different action. So for some people, when we first went into lockdown, they got really busy because that's how they cope with uncertainty. Or some people needed to take a step back and give themselves some time and to grieve what was happening in the world. And I was certainly one of those people. I needed a little bit of time and space just to process what was happening. And sometimes when we are dealing with uncertainty, it does mean that we choose to comfort ourselves in some way, whether that is with food or maybe drinking a little bit too much. But that again is natural and normal. So just be really careful about the media that you are consuming. And, you know, don't let anyone tell you that the worst thing that could have happened to you during lockdown is to have put on weight, because it really isn't. If your body's changed during lockdown, That's probably quite normal. I mean, I would expect that to be the case. Don't let anyone tell you that's the worst thing that could have happened to you, because it's really not. You know, there are people who have lost their job, there are people who have got sick, there are people who have died. So just to get that in perspective and really be mindful of the media that you're looking at. So those are my 3 tips to help you to deal with post-lockdown body anxiety. So that's all I've got for this episode of Body Confident Friday, and I hope to catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching.